Good afternoon or good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is February 6th, and we're at about 2 o'clock East Coast time, and really excited to have everybody here. My name is Dr. Dustin Sachs, and I am the Chief Technologist and Senior Director of Programs for the Cyber Risk Collaborative, and really excited to be able to kick off this month's topic. For those of you who have joined us here before, you know that every month here at Cyber Risk Alliance and at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, we have a topic that is kind of the key topic of the month. And this month, it is none other than generative AI. So today, we're going to be talking about AI and cybersecurity, balancing innovation, ethics, and risk. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Cyber Risk Collaborative is our member organization, our member community here at Cyber Risk Alliance. Our mission is really to help accelerate career development, offer tools and strategies and discussions and resources and techniques and all of the things that a CISO and their team may need in order to address key issues within the organization and key security issues. One of the big things is we provide that in a vendor and analyst-free environment. We really highlight collaboration. It's CISOs talking with CISOs, security leaders talking with security leaders. We're also here to help with operational efficiency and organizational intelligence, as well as helping our members build their networks, build their personal brands, and have 24/7, 365 access to peers, tools, solutions. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those tools and solutions here in a few minutes. Again, we do this through a number of things. We have leadership development, and I'll pitch right now. Next week, next Wednesday, we will be launching our very first leadership development member briefing of 2025. We're going to have a really great conversation around not only succession planning, but dealing with organizational resiliency and handling the unexpected. We're going to have Bob West and Shannon Robery joining us. It's going to be a really great discussion. We're also here to help with workforce development. Again, empowering teams, updating teams with the latest and greatest in learning opportunities, providing intelligence and insight, and talking about the most emerging tech and emerging topics through member-driven and member-developed content and resources. And we do that through our resource toolkits. Resource toolkits, right now we have 18 of them. They are topic-specific, curated groups of member-developed tools. And in a moment, I'll show everybody a little bit of that. We also do peer collaboration. We hold regular task forces and discussions around topics of great importance. We're currently talking about board reporting, and next week we'll be launching a task force to talk about cyber insurance and the challenges and topics are related to cyber insurance. And of course, the other thing that we always do is help to amplify personal brands and help you get your message out to the community. Resource toolkits, the first thing I want to do is encourage everybody on this call and everybody listening to this call to make sure to sign up for our generative AI governance resource toolkit launch, which we will be doing on February 20th. We'll be doing a member briefing about that, where we'll be walking through our latest and greatest resource toolkit. For those of you who are interested in learning more about our resource toolkits, there's a URL that will show you a PDF of all of the toolkits that we've got. We've also showing a screenshot of those toolkits, and those toolkits were all developed to help save time, save money, save bandwidth of your teams trying to figure out and not having to reinvent the wheel. So we really encourage you to learn more about that. We'll share some how to contact us and how to reach out to learn more about resource toolkits. Last week, we did a demo of those resource toolkits. We'll be doing more of those demos throughout the year. I encourage you to please pay attention to the weekly member update as we announce those events, as well as the Cyber Risk Collaborative website. But moving to our discussion today, as we start talking about the concept of generative AI governance, I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Sandy Dunn. She is the CISO for Quark IQ, and Rock Lambros, who is the CEO and founder of Rock Cyber. Both are massively well-known experts in the AI space. And we're going to have a really great conversation, really looking at some of the things around the frameworks and the landscape of AI as we kind of start this month and start thinking about this topic throughout the next couple of weeks. So first, I'll turn to Sandy. Sandy, please feel free to introduce yourself to the audience.
Oh, you did a great job. I'm actually CISO at Brand Engagement Networks, which is a B2B um, digital assistant solution. So deeply into, AI and talking to customers about AI and talk, safety and security with AI.
Absolutely. And Rock, please, introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, Rock Lambros, as you mentioned, CEO and founder of Rock Cyber. We're a cybersecurity and AI consultancy based in Denver, Colorado. I've been in the industry about 25 years. I consider myself a recovering CISO, although we do provide fractional CISO services. And I'm the co-author of the CISO Evolution, Business Knowledge for Cybersecurity Executives, along with Matthew Sharp.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I will say, I think this is probably the first time, Rock, that you and I have been on a call where the book is not in the background.
Which is, I have it. Mine's
I have it on my bookshelf as well. But yeah, Rock almost always has it in the background. So I'm impressed that he is joining us today from obviously an undisclosed location. But so, as we start and as we talk about this topic and as we set the stage, obviously anybody who is attending right now has heard about generative AI. We turn on the news, we hear about it every day. Recently, we've heard a lot more about it and the influence that maybe foreign adversaries have over the development of generative AI, which we will definitely talk about. I definitely want to make sure that we hit on all of the keywords and topics that everybody has probably got on their webinar bingo card today. But, one of the things that I think we talked about in the prep for this that was really exciting or really interesting to me is I look at all the technologies that have come out over the last, let's say, 30, 40 years. And the time between the launch of that and kind of adoption and advancement of it was always there was a pretty decent amount of time between getting from the release to really true full adoption and innovation on it. Whereas with AI, we've really seen from a mainstream view that over the last, let's say, 2 years, we've really evolved in a way that and at a speed that is really unprecedented. I always think back to Moore's law and duplication every 2 years, and really we're seeing that happening at a much faster pace. So as you both look at, and we'll start, Sandy, with you, but as you look at the landscape of AI, what for you is the most kind of jarring or eye-opening or most important thing to keep in mind as you're having any discussion about AI?
Well, I think the one thing you talked about generative AI, and I think that the important thing to think about is AI in all parts of your business. So, generative AI is getting a lot of attention, but we use AI in all parts of the business. And so what ChatGPT escalated was, kind of putting a spotlight on AI and what was possible with it, and all the ways it is being used within your business. And so, if it's okay with you, I'd like to really talk about it at a broader level and talk about, for organizations, your responsibility is to understand how is AI used in our business, and then how do we manage it. Now, my perspective on it is you can't look at it in isolation. We really, this is part of your business. It's part of your basically business as code, right? And we've been moving toward business as code for the last 40 years. Now, prior to that, and Rock touches on this when he talks about being a recovering CISO, which is we have always been behind on the governance and the safety and the security. Like, it's always been moving faster. I mean, he talks about recovering. It's because as CISOs, you're constantly throwing your body on the hand grenade, trying to stop the business from doing something that's ridiculous. But everything's broken. Look at HIPAA. Look at SOC 2. SOC 2, that's the best security measure we have, is a SOC 2. Something that's become basically gamified within the industry. So let's agree it was a mess before generative AI. And we just added kerosene and brought a lighter with us. So what does that mean? That for organizations, you now have to say, okay, I have to take this is forcing a discussion that I know Rock is in the same, where I was begging people to patch, begging them to do the right thing, and not, using whatever levers and hammers I could to get security, to get the organization safe. But it's a very difficult conversation. What AI has done for us is they don't have a choice now. I mean, they absolutely, you either get in front of this or you become, waste along the, because both from you can't, the attackers are using it will be able to cause, financial impact, and your competitors are. So now so organizations now, I was thinking about getting ready for our discussion today. Every organization should think about themselves as a nuclear power plant, and all of your digital everything, your data, that's your uranium. And now it's, it can give you power, it can do a lot of good for you, but it can also cause a meltdown. There's nuclear waste you have to worry about. And now, your job as a business, and I'm not saying as a CISO, I'm not saying as legal, I'm saying as an organization, is you have to say, wow, if we don't do this correctly, we're going to cause a huge accident that we won't recover from. Now, and I know you want to talk about governance. And governance is really like, what are those, what are those dials and knobs that I have to put in my business to continually monitor? Think about that too. You want those gauges in there. It's not one time. It's not like SOC 2. I go through once a year and see who has access to everything. I send them an email and said, dude, did you approve the access for all of these people to use Slack? Which is a checkbox activity. This, now you're being forced, because of the speed, you have to step in and say, okay, where are the gauges? Where's my uranium? Do I know where it's at? Is it going to, are things going to start to melt down? How, do I, is the government going to come in and shut us down because I haven't been doing my job of maintaining my plant? Like, that's how you have to pivot the way that you think.
Absolutely. So, Rock, as we get your kind of opening thoughts, I think of a lot of the kind of, I'll say, buzzwords that we've had over the last couple of years, be it zero trust, be it, this SPM, type of security posture management, be it, whatever. I feel like Gen AI is one of those different ones where it's really now got a level of staying power that other kind of buzzwords didn't have, never really kind of got. You hear people talk about zero trust every now and then, but it's really now in a small circle of people who are dealing with identity and access management, whereas generative AI has now become part of the fabric of everything we talk about in business and in security. So set the stage for us as well from your perspective, and especially when we talk about all of the different frameworks, which we're going to move into talking about a little bit, that are out there.
Yeah, first, I love Sandy's analogy of the nuclear power plant because Microsoft's spinning up 3 Mile Island to power AI, right? As as part of
And for
their AI
those
initiatives.
people who may not be familiar, 3 Mile Island was a major nuclear incident that happened in the mid 70s,
80s.
or 80s, mid 80s,
Early
excuse
80s,
me,
right?
early 80s. Please definitely look it up because you'll understand the analogy a little bit better. But yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, so here's what I'm seeing, right? I think, you know, being a recovering CISO, we would get a lot of pushback on the business with regards to, oh, securities, insurance, what's my return on investment, all that kind of stuff. What I'm seeing with AI is that now executives are asking about proactively, all right, how do we do this right? How do we put the right guardrails around it? How do we not expose ourselves to massive data breach or reputational harm, or how do we not expose society potentially to societal harm, especially if it's where financial services making credit risk decisions, right? So there's more engagement from the C-suite early on. Having said that, AI, all the things, is not a strategy, right? So way too often I get phone calls around, hey, Rock, can you help us with AI governance? Sure, sure. What are we governing? And then they kind of pause and they're like, I just told you AI, you idiot. And I'm like, no, like, what are the use cases? What are the specific use cases that we're trying to wrap our arms around, right? Have you quantified the value of those use cases, right? Have you done the ROI? Do you understand all the costs that go into, developing that AI or bringing that AI in house and training it on your data, right? And is there going to be a positive result as a result, as a result of it, right? Um, Now, I am glad to see frameworks starting to drop, not even starting, right? They've been around for a little bit, whether it be ISO 2040, I'm sorry, ISO 42001, which you could actually get certified against, or the NIST AI risk management framework, which, isn't a certification, but it is a standard. But from a regulatory
But it's
standpoint,
more,
right, we're starting, go ahead.
yeah, but that's more about your processes too. I mean, there's still a
Yeah,
huge gap in actually trying to roll these systems out and manage them.
and
I'm
what's
glad you
really
said that because
what I
that's
think you
where
brought up.
OWASP comes in,
And Rock,
right?
what I
I'll
think you
just
brought up that was really interesting is, you've heard, and we heard very early on from the non-security business leaders, hey, we've got to deal with this AI thing. We've got to deal with it. And we all kind of said, okay, cool. We're going to do this differently than we've done things in the past. We're going to govern this better from the beginning. And we're sitting here now 2 years later going, hey, now we've got to govern this thing. We're in the same place that we've always been, where we said we were going to do it differently, and somehow we get 2 years ahead, and we're like, crap, we didn't do it the way we said
Well,
we were going to
it's
do it. Yeah,
I would some of it though is when you think about what we're asking people to do, have ethics. I
oh yeah,
mean, that's a societal problem. Like, how do you define ethics? And ethics in the United States is different than it is in Australia. In Australia, you can't advertise medical drugs on TV.
oh yeah,
So think about, just the society difference between us and, somebody in Saudi Arabia. We can say
oh,
anything we want
absolutely,
around our leaders. That's called freedom of speech. In Saudi Arabia, if you say something against the royal family, that could be a jail sentence. So, I mean,
yeah,
don't
absolutely,
underestimate the challenge, how
yeah.
difficult a challenge this is. Is it necessary? It's probably, I mean, we probably have needed to, in some ways, have a solution for bias and discrimination for, a millennial.
yeah.
We're not going to solve it in 2 years.
Oh no, absolutely. So
Yeah.
first of all, for anyone who is here with us live, and you have a question, please feel free to use the Q&A function, which is right in the center of your screen. It's the two little looks like speech bubbles. Please feel free to submit questions. So Rock, one of the things that obviously, because one of the things we definitely want to make sure everybody comes out of this with is some real good practical tips and tricks and things and strategies and what have you. And I think the very first one is how, and I'd love to hear from both of you, Rock, we'll start with you. How can CISOs, how can security teams stay ahead of, or at least keep up with, the evolving AI regulations, the evolving compliance requirements, and the evolving threats that are coming out? We're going to talk, obviously, about the big elephant in the room, DeepSeek, here in a few minutes. But how do you stay ahead of all of these things, or at least just keep up with the rapid evolution of AI?
Yeah, so just some tangible things that you can do. The IAPP, International Association of Privacy Professionals, has a really good AI regulation tracker. And then get involved, right? It's no secret. Like Sandy and I are both involved with OWASP, and I was going to go there a little bit earlier, right? If you're looking for like more tactical tips around, how to actually secure the AI systems, go there, genai.owasp.org. And but that's how I say ahead is I learn by doing, so I get involved, right? Whether it be OWASP, whether it be co-authoring or contributing to white papers, stuff like that. That's how I say ahead. I get involved. You can only pick up so much from newsletters, right? And there's a lot of noise out there in the Twitterverse and the interwebs and all the other things, right? Get involved. Get involved with the people who are actually doing something about the challenges.
And I would also add, as you bring up OWASP, certainly if you're a member of InfraGard, I know InfraGard has been doing a lot of that, a lot of work around AI as well, and obviously with the mission and the visibility into what the FBI and government agencies are dealing with, DHS, etc. Certainly getting involved in that, watching what's the cybersecurity infrastructure security agency, CISA, is doing as well, is always really important. And making sure that you're keeping up on reputable and non-FUD, non-fear sources. Probably going to CNN and some of the mainstream news, you're going to get a lot of FUD, you're going to get a lot of fear out there. So going to these reliable sources like OWASP is important. Sandy, from your perspective, how do you stay abreast and as much as you can ahead of, or at least keeping up with, what's going on in AI, since it seems like every morning we wake up and some new thing has come out related to AI?
Well, I want to touch on what Rock said, which is there you do have to um, educate yourself on generative AI, because it is completely a different type of technology than we've ever tried to incorporate into a business before. It's non-deterministic. It's a word calculator. It's not built. What I see frequently is people trying to make it do things it wasn't really designed to do. It's a creative tool. It's supposed to hallucinate and come up with big ideas. That's really its mission, is to help you think. So understand, understand, how does it work? How do those neural networks come up with those numbers? How can I tweak it? That is probably, at least, and again, it's unbelievably, there's a lot to it. You start going into the rabbit hole of the complexity of it and you can get buried, but at least at some level acknowledge that this is completely different than anything you've ever worked with before. I frequently see people, and some people with pretty established history within cybersecurity, trying to provide guidance on it, and they clearly don't understand the tool, and they clearly don't understand how it's different. Things as simple as, we keep saying test. Well, if you test something traditionally, you knew if it was susceptible to cross-site scripting, if you knew if you could do a SQL injection. With generative AI systems, you may test it 5 times, 10 times, and then finally get it to give you a bad answer. So that range of testing, and the attack surface is so huge. So there's a cost to testing. So how pervasive what is your level of investment that you want to make to ensure that it's safe and secure? How much risk are you willing to live with? So and I one of the fascinating things to me with all of the AI groups I'm part of is because of the volume, it's actually improved the human to human connection, like the conversations and the discussions, because you're relying on the people that you trust to point you in the right direction because there's just way too much information.
Absolutely. And, obviously staying abreast of it, trying to say, oh, I'm going to stay ahead of it is a losing battle. It's just happening so quickly. So let's talk a little bit. Let's shift a little bit. We've heard a lot of news recently about the role of AI from an adversarial standpoint, the concept of adversarial attacks. Obviously, whether your organization is part of, the groups of organizations that are using AI regularly within the organization, the adversaries are certainly using it. It helps them scale. It helps them do things to speed. It helps them remove some of the flaws and things. I mean, we've seen phishing emails that now get created that are hard, if not almost impossible to distinguish, because AI is capable of removing all of those common things that you look for, misspellings, etc. What are some of the biggest risks and adversarial attacks we're seeing AI being used for?
I mean, you mentioned DeepSeek earlier, right? I mean, model extraction, which is relatively novel to do, right? I mean, Stanford did it to OpenAI a few years ago. It extracted the model by to 98% accuracy for like $600, right? Stanford researchers. So we're seeing that. Prompt injection is a thing, right? It's the method used to frankly exploit a lot of the other vulnerabilities on the top 10 for LLM list from OWASP, right? To be able to jailbreak a model, get it to disclose its secrets, all that kind of stuff, right? There's a great not research, like researcher from Mozilla, like stumbled upon, doing some prompt injection. He was essentially able to get OpenAI to execute some Python code, disclose its internals, move files around on the internal file system, delete files, that type of thing, right? So we're seeing more attacks that way.
Well, and one of the ones that I always remember that was always to me, and it was an early on one, but it's one that really kind of opened my eyes to this idea that there is so much, the speed at which attacks and the level at which attacks can be initiated was early on. I remember ChatGPT, what some security researcher found, or was able to query or were able to prompt ChatGPT to provide information about CVEs, critical vulnerabilities, that MITRE had not yet actually publicly released, but had put into their database. And these attackers, the researchers said, well, an attacker could go do this, find out about an attack that everybody knows or that MITRE knows about, initiate the attack ahead of time, or come up with a way now to circumvent the mitigations that MITRE was telling people to implement, so that when that CVE comes out, it's pointless because it's not going to help you mitigate the incident because they've already moved ahead of that and accounted for that. So, the fact that there's the knowledge and the information that it's being trained on gives you the ability to execute attacks that you might not even think of, or that are so simple but so dangerous and powerful. And I think we have to at this point talk about what I'll say is the elephant in the room, which is what happens when an adversarial country has and really invests in creating and utilizing AI in a way that can cause disruption. And that's, of course, talking about DeepSeek. I think one of the things that we talked about in the prep that was really significant was the idea that regardless of the how it was developed and any of the kind of news one way or the other of what is the impact of it, it is clear that the release of DeepSeek disrupted the market in numerous ways, good and bad, real and not. But what does this is really, I feel like, the first time, or one of the first times, we saw a pretty significant disruption to the market because of AI. What are the things that we as security professionals need to be thinking about for the next disruption that's going to come? Sandy.
Well, so we know that deepfakes are the most common ways that organizations and individuals are being attacked. So it's so easy to clone a voice or clone an image. Grandparents are getting panicky calls from grandchildren that sound just like their grandchildren, saying that they've been kidnapped, and that's turning into those type of attacks. So, what I would recommend an organization do is, think about, and this is classic business impact analysis. Sit down and add all of this AI to your business impact analysis and come up with those 5 or 6 scenarios that are your absolute most worst day, and make sure it's part of your incident response plan. Make sure it's part of your communication plan. What are you going to do if somebody publishes something that's untrue about your business and causes the stock to fall? Are you going to respond if you see one message? Are you going to respond if you see 5 messages? I think my best advice is to not just sit and wait, but think forward and plan effectively so that you can maintain resilience.
So, Rock, when we're looking at the way that both these advancements in AI technology, but also the way that AI can be used in adversarial attacks, one of the ones that really, and as we talk about deep fakes and the capabilities of using AI to execute attacks, one of the things that really I struggle with as a GRC professional is it really changes the way your traditional processes can work, because now I can't tell somebody at the help desk, hey, just ask them a question that they would only know the answer to, because that kind of information is harder and harder to keep in a secret, or not fake somehow. So what, from a governance standpoint, when we think about combating some of the ways AI can be used, how should we be looking at our processes? What should we be looking at as security leaders to say, what, we need to reevaluate this, and maybe we need to come up with an alternative method? And how do you get a handle of that? How do you sit down and figure out where are all the places I need to be thinking about AI?
I think it goes right back to what Sandy said, right? Your business impact assessment. From a financial perspective to your organization, where would the biggest impact be? And go target that, right? Do classical process improvement techniques around that, whether you're a Six Sigma fan or other lean methodologies, whatever. Taking into account the unique risk that AI poses, right? Maybe your traditional callback techniques for a service desk or for a funds exchange needs to now have a visual component to it, right? Because it's one thing for deepfake using Gen AI on the back end to dynamically create answers to your questions. It's another thing for a deepfake for an individual to be here in front of a Zoom, which we know has worked and led to $20 million in exfiltration. But something as simple as hey, can you turn your head to the right? That's a little harder to do on the visual side of deepfakes right now. We're probably not far from even that being blown up, but right, just considering, there are still some keep it simple, stupid type of methodologies that we can look into to alleviate some of those risks.
Absolutely.
But I think it goes right back to what Sandy said. If you're looking for where to tackle first, it's got to tie back to your business impact analysis.
So one of the things that I'll certainly call out here for those who are listening going, okay, business impact analysis sounds great. It's a real beast to try to do a business impact analysis. Let me call attention to the fact that one of the resource toolkits that we actually have is around cloud computing. And in there, we actually gave some tools and resources and guidance around how to conduct a business impact analysis, even including a template to help you conduct a business impact analysis. So if you're a member of our accelerator program and you have access to our resource toolkits, I highly encourage you to check that out so that you can go start this afternoon almost doing your business impact analysis. It can be that quick with some of the tools and resources that we've got available. It can certainly be a lot quicker starting it than it would be. It still will take some time and coordination, but
yes,
creating the tools to start that, which can often take weeks or months to do, you will not have to struggle with as much. I know that you should not just jump into a business impact analysis without planning.
It's a lot of coordination, CFOs and legals and
absolutely there's coordination, but some of the prep that is necessary, which can be the time-consuming parts, are certainly we've certainly tried to make easier. So let's shift for a moment, because we've talked about some of the negative, let's say, or the downsides and the risks of AI, but let's talk for a moment about the benefits that AI certainly has. We've certainly seen where it can optimize certain operations. It can make certain repetitive tasks easier. Now with agentic AI, with agents, you can do things that maybe you couldn't previously do using AI, that becomes a lot easier or makes it a lot more scalable. If I'm a CISO, if I'm a security leader and I'm looking at my organization, and obviously every tool now out there in software or computing says, oh, we've now got AI in some way in our tool. How do we enable the business to leverage AI properly while also maintaining the security that we need to maintain as security leaders, so that we can move away from the traditional department of no to the department of let's do it, but let's do it safely? So Rock, how do we do that? How do we enable innovation without sacrificing security?
Well, it's a balance, right? You're never going to have 100% of both. And there's kind of a mantra in cybersecurity that the business is always going to win. Well, guess what? From an AI perspective, business and innovation is still always going to win, right? So, right. So this is a super opportunity. Whereas, before we have often complained that we're not getting a seat at the table. CISOs aren't business enablers; they just get in the way, that type of thing. This is a great opportunity to flip that script. And again, it's understanding what's important to your business, understanding the organization's risk appetite, and then internally from within, like your own cybersecurity program standpoint, what's some of the low-hanging fruit that you can address, right? Whether that be user access reviews, whether that be log analysis and kind of like tier 1 incident triage in your security ops team, right? Just start identifying those use cases like your organization would about business use cases, like what would benefit you internally, right? And shifting back to the original point of your question, right? It's important to understand how the business operates. Again, going back to all the things I've been preaching for years, understanding the business context, right? Are you in cost-cutting mode or are you in high-growth mode, right? Stuff like that's gonna determine the long-term business strategy. So work with your business. Like you said, not the department of no. I always say not the department of no, but the department of how. And if you can make that paradigm shift, right, you'll be amazed at what you can get done from a security leadership perspective.
Absolutely. So Sandy, we're at the time of the year where I think a lot of organizations have either just finished or are just getting ready to finish really their KPI and metrics planning for 2025. What are some of those metrics, KPIs, things that organizations should be thinking about and saying, this needs to be on my list of things I'm either tracking, whether I'm reporting it to, the board or senior leadership or otherwise? I think it would be really helpful to understand, and we'll start with you and then Rock, if you've got any to add. What are some of those metrics so that those who are listening to this can go, yep, I've got that one. I've got that one. Oh, I didn't even think about that one,
Yeah.
but that's a really good one.
Yeah, metrics is a whole nother podcast. I mean,
Right.
I think,
Absolutely.
traditionally, we put those metrics out there to kind of make ourselves feel better, and then we have something to track and report against. Just to circle back, I'll answer the question. I want to circle back to the nuclear power plant. Like, I want to emphasize that businesses today, if I could get one point across, it's you can't afford to do business like you have in the past. You can't take 5 months to do a business impact analysis. Speed is the game, because if you're not in front of it, your power plant is going to melt down. Now, if I went to a nuclear power plant owner and I said, what's your business? What's your worst day? I guarantee he knows it from immediately what his worst day is. Why? Because he understands the danger of what he's trying to do. And that's, I think businesses do not understand. They, over the last 40 years, which is why we see so many breaches, why we have so many problems, businesses have underappreciated the, how adversarial this internet is, and that they are a target for every type of adversary out there. And so you can't, I would tell you, AI is both the poison and the antidote. So my advice would be, look at whatever process you're doing and cut the time that it takes to do it in half, at least. That even before generative AI, we were getting outperformed by our adversaries because they didn't have to worry about legal. They didn't have to worry about, budget or procurement, or, and now we just handed them a flamethrower. So they were doing great before. They're doing better now. And so, if you can't think about it, you really have got to spin how you think about it from, trying to prevent everything to being resilient and understanding what your threats are. What is going to take your business now? Can you see it? Can you get in front of it? Can you recover from it? So as far as metrics, for me, it would be, understanding, how long does it take for you to identify an attack against your business? How many attacks do you know about? How much is getting logged? How much visibility do you have? What do you know now versus what you should know to be able to protect your business?
Yeah. And none of what Sandy just mentioned is unique to AI, right? That's something we should be
Right.
tracking from our old school 20-year-old cybersecurity programs.
And I think that's a really interesting point that you make, and one that we're going to definitely discuss later this month with the AI governance task force that we did at the end of last year. Because the point that you just made, Rock, which is it's not really any different than the traditional methods you've used, was a theme that came out in our task force, which was when we were talking about, well, do you need to do third-party risk management differently for AI? No. If you're using your process correctly, maybe you add a couple extra questions, but your process is generally speaking the same.
Desmond, I will argue that it's actually raising the water table, because
Of
AI
course.
has brought in, talking about supply chain, talking about, where the data and all of that. So again, I want to go back
Yeah.
to, it was broken before. It was
Absolutely.
unsustainable before. So now, because this is now a power tool, and the damage, the attack surface is
Yep.
huge and the impact could be huge. Businesses, if you're not addressing this, you're probably in trouble.
Absolutely. So we're getting ready to move towards our question and answer period. And before we do that, I definitely, we always do on these calls. I want to share a couple of quick poll questions, for a number of things, and I'll leave them up while people can also feel free to submit questions. And while that's happening, I'm going to ask a couple of questions for you guys. And I think one of the things I definitely wanted to do was have a little bit of fun, and also have a little bit of a lightning round of questions for you guys. Some of the kind of what I'll say common questions whenever you talk about AI. So the first question that I'll ask, and Rock, I'll start with you, and then Sandy. real quick answers here. Is AI going to take my job?
AI is going to take your job if you don't embrace AI. If you don't embrace AI.
Sandy.
Um, are you talking yours specifically or the general public?
Generally speaking, the question that gets asked is AI going to take
Yeah.
my job?
I would say that I don't have a firm answer to that. That I think that there's lots of problems to solve in the world, and that as humans we can use AI to solve better problems, and that's a job for everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, follow-up question to that one that I'll ask for you, and I'll start with you, Sandy. Is AI more likely to benefit humanity, or is this the start of Terminator, Skynet coming online and killing us ultimately?
It's it, you know, at base it is still data and algorithms, and I believe that AI will benefit society just like technology, just like we don't use people don't have to use pickaxes to dig holes anymore. We have all sorts of tools to be able to do that. We have x-rays, we have all sorts of ways. So I think innovation and advancement in all types of technology has for the most part always benefited society.
Rock.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I think there's like we mentioned early on, there's a super awareness around getting AI right. This week, or maybe it was late last week, OpenAI announced that they have an agreement with the government now to institute AI inside like the whole nuclear arsenal capability. Again, got to be really, really careful about that. But I think everybody understands that at this point, right? And I think there's a hyper focus on, whether it be governance, the guardrails, the controls, the actual security of the models, that type of stuff. So, I agree with Sandy. I think overall it will, and has, frankly, benefited society as a whole.
Awesome. And final one before we jump into some of the Q&A that we've got here, which is Rock, we'll start with you on this one. Will AI ever surpass human intelligence?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we keep
What's
going
the
on the pace of
definition?
innovation that we do now, we are, I believe, closer to artificial general intelligence than many people believe. And, artificial super intelligence is, a leap beyond that. But I foresee a world where, you know, call it Star Trek, right? Where we're more Star Trek than 2001: Space Odyssey, right? Where AI has outpaced the capacity of human intelligence. Sure.
And Sandy, to
Now,
your
am I saying
question,
that in the next century?
what I'm
No.
yeah. So, and Sandy, to your question, what I'm asking it, what we're really asking is, will AI be able to reason and make decisions better than, more intelligently than humans?
So I'm there is this is there is many people who argue on the definition of what is intelligence, what is thinking, what is truth, what is accuracy, what is a fact. So it's opened up all sorts of questions, and I think that there's all if regurgitating information is equal to intelligence, then Google is smarter than me. So I, I I am going to say that they've been trying to define AGI for a really long time, and there's definitely people who are again using our emotions to drive us and force decisions for and if you look at who's driving that, it's people in leadership who benefit it, just like the people who benefit if we talk about zero trust. I mean, that was driven by vendors, that wasn't driven by hard-nosed CISOs like Rock and I. We already knew it was a really hard thing to do. So I'm going to say that I would recommend try to separate the technology from the hyperbole, and don't get caught up in the emotional aspects of this, and understand that we have a lot to make up from a lot of years. The other thing about AI that doesn't get brought up enough is, if you look at in 1940, when the very first discussion around AI came up, and there was a lot of work in the 50s and 60s, they started asking, how do humans make decisions? How do we think? We
Yep.
actually benefited. They started doing a lot more around human psychology. Behavioral
Yep.
psychology didn't exist until we started asking the question, because we're trying to create it in technology. So there has been a parallel evolution and advancement in understanding humans and computers. And I believe that that pattern will continue, and that, it's going to be rocky. It took us 40 years before with x-rays before we weren't killing people. So, it's there's no easy answer, but I believe it's a step in the right direction. I think the end goal is happier people.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that we got from the audience, and I'm going to modify it just a little bit because don't want to talk necessarily about specific tools or specific names of tools that might be out there, but what, Rock, are some of the most interesting or most noteworthy ways in which you're seeing AI being used to help security operations and security teams do their jobs better, that our listeners should maybe pay attention to or be looking into at the technology level?
Actually, I am seeing more and more analysts, SOC analysts, you know, picking up some Python and using some, Python machine learning libraries like LangChain and stuff like that to start automating some of their internal processes, right? So it's not going out to the market and buying a new flashy blinky light widget, whatever, right? They're taking it upon themselves to to learn machine learning and then AI, and maybe they write an agent to specifically focus on threat intel and another agent to specifically focus on log analysis, and then there's an orchestration agent above that to start better correlating things in the capabilities that our sims can't do today. I'm seeing a lot of internal development in the SOC in that regard.
Absolutely. Sandy, from your perspective, real quick, what are you seeing as some of the most interesting areas where AI is benefiting security operations and security teams?
Well, I think it's just like Rock said. I think what we're seeing is people, looking at these tools and then applying them to how they work. The biggest challenges that they have out in front of them, and that is another thing that's very unique about generative AI, is there is a personal aspect to it where you're adopting it so that it's helping you accelerate how you work. Where, you know, you know previously the business said, okay, we're using Microsoft Word. Everyone uses Microsoft Word. We all adopted. I think generative AI is slightly different because there is, everyone uses it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. Well, so as we kind of get to the end, I want to start wrapping up here. And, the first thing, certainly, thank you both for being here. Obviously, both of you are very knowledgeable out there, really helping to build the body of knowledge on this. Sandy, starting with you, quick final thoughts, anything that's like the key takeaway you want people to have. And then Rock, from your perspective, what's that kind of final key takeaway, kind of distilling it down to that one kind of salient thought? So Sandy.
I would say, just recognize that AI is technology, and that it's like we've said a couple times on this call, you can't isolate it from all of the other technology, all of the other badness that is out there. And think about it as both, a tool, a target, something that could be attacked, but also how do you use it within your organization to accelerate what you do. Look at both the benefits and the threats.
Absolutely. Rock, final thoughts
Yeah,
from
our
you?
industry, yeah, our industry doesn't have the time or space for get off my lawn moments anymore, right? I still hear security professionals say, "Well, we haven't gotten our foundational controls down right, and now we got to go secure AI." No, embrace it. Figure out how to use AI to close the gaps in those foundational controls, and then figure out, be that partner with the business to help the organization enable AI safely to achieve those positive business outcomes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Rock and Sandy, both for that. I think my kind of final thought, and as I think to the conversation that we've had, and even one of the kind of lightning round questions that I asked, the answer to the is AI going to take my job? I think the CISO that I worked for previous to the role here at CRA said it best, which is AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job, and I think that is kind of the key. You've got to embrace it. It's not, toothpaste is out of the tube. We're going to be talking about this a lot this month. I encourage all of you to follow along, follow us both at SC Media, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us at Cyber Risk Alliance, and Cyber Risk Collaborative, get involved. We've got several upcoming events as well, including, again, on February 20th, when we're going to have our member briefing that is open to anybody listening to this who wants to come hear about the work that our task force and that our CISO members have been doing around generative AI and helping to actually give those tools and resources to help you govern and get a start at governing AI better. For anyone who's interested in learning more about the Cyber Risk Collaborative membership or our resource toolkits, please email Tom Ward. His email address is up on the screen right now. I want to thank both of my guests, Sandy, Rock. Thank you both for being here. I want to also shout out the fact that later this month, I believe next week even, we're going to be releasing this month's CISO Stories podcast with Jessica Hoffman, who's Deputy CISO for Philadelphia. And her guest this month was none other than Rock Lambros. So, Rock, you want to tell us a little bit about what you guys talked about on that podcast?
Frankly, a lot of the same that we talked about today, but from more of from a governance perspective. So it was a great conversation. Hope you listen in.
Yeah, absolutely. Please check it out. Make sure that you see that. Make sure that you check out the weekly member update and our websites to see all of the upcoming events that we've got going on. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for participating. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you, Rock and Sandy, for sharing your guidance and insight. And we look forward to seeing everybody again real soon on another one of these webcasts or on our social media. Thank you all so much for being here today. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.